We're here today because last week the government sent us a near total termination of our work with unaccompanied kids. Um, I say near total because the termination covers almost all of our work that we do in defending the rights of children who arrive in the United States without a parent or legal guardian. The only thing that we are allowed to continue to do is provide very basic, bare bones, know your rights presentations to young children. When I'm saying young children, I'm talking about children as young as toddlers, children who can't read or write, children who maybe don't speak English, maybe don't even speak Spanish as a second language, who have already been through incredible trauma on their journey to the United States and are now in deportation proceedings or immigration proceedings. And what the government expects now is that that young child is supposed to find their local courthouse, walk up the steps, go through security, find the courtroom, sit in the chair on a booster seat, maybe, and defend themselves before a judge and a trained government attorney whose only job is to deport them and argue that that child should be deported in a language they may not be comfortable with. They might even be pre-verbal, all without an attorney to protect them, to guide them, to uphold their best interests. And when I say attorney, I'm not talking about any run-of-the-mill attorney. I'm talking about the wonderful, incredible attorneys in our network across the country who have signed up to represent children, who know to uphold the best interests of these children, and who care deeply about their clients. This is an affront to human decency, this termination, and it shocks our consciousness, our conscious. And I think it's fair to say it's the worst attack on immigrant children since family separation. So I am very heartened to see so many people across this country coming together to find out what we can do to defend the program against this attack, and to tell these kids that they're not alone. I'm going to now turn to our speakers, and I will ask the speakers to introduce themselves very briefly and then present their prepared remarks. I apologize if I'm going out of order, but I'm going to call on Lillian Ponte at the Florence Project first.
Thank you so much, Bilal. I'm Liliana Ponte Miranda, Executive Director at the Florence Immigrant and Refugee Rights Project. Thank you so much for joining us today. As Bilal said, 72 hours ago, we learned of the near complete shutdown of the Unaccompanied Children Program, a federally funded program that provides legal and social services to immigrant children who are in the United States alone. This is unprecedented terrain for the Florence Project and the national network of legal services providers who assist immigrant children. And as we navigate this moment, we seek to build knowledge, strength, and solidarity in our community. To that end, I'll begin our webinar with an overview of the Unaccompanied Children Program. And first, center the humanity and vulnerability of the children we serve. Second, affirm the critical need for legal and social services to immigrant children. And third, sound the alarm on what is at stake today for the rights and safety of immigrant children. First, who are the immigrant children that we serve? The children we serve through the Unaccompanied Children Program arrive in the United States without a parent or legal guardian, or have been separated from their parent or legal guardian. Many of the children we serve have been abused, have been neglected in their home countries. There are children who are fleeing violence. There are children who may be victims of trafficking. There are children who have experienced trauma, whether in their home country or on their journey to the United States. Once they arrive to the United States or are apprehended by immigration authorities, they are taken into government custody and then placed in children's shelter detention facilities. That's where we and our network of legal service providers meet with children for the first time. I had the privilege to begin my work with the Florence Project as a staff attorney in our children's program. And I recall walking into a children's shelter detention facility and meeting Maria, a 15-year-old girl who had been abused in her home country. I had to give her the news that she would need to remain in detention while we pursued her legal case. I remember her looking at me and saying, "I cannot go back. I will do it. I have no choice." We have met children like 6-year-old Juliana and her 4-year-old brother Juan. Juliana and Juan had been separated from their mother, and Juliana needed help to walk to the front of the courtroom because she is blind. We have met children like Ramon, who was fleeing forced child labor by his grandfather and whom we represented in his asylum case. We have met children like Sandra, who was fleeing sexual violence and who, without her attorney by her side, had difficulty speaking in court about the violence she had endured. The children receiving services through the Unaccompanied Children program are vulnerable. They don't have a trusted adult in their lives. They're alone in an unfamiliar country. Most don't speak English, and they are navigating a complex and oftentimes adversarial immigration system. So what do we do? What do legal service providers like us do to assist unaccompanied children? We provide children in immigration detention with legal services that include legal education as well as representation in court. Our social workers also provide wraparound services to children's well-being while they undergo their immigration court proceedings. We are with children every step of the way in their legal process. We began our services at children's shelter detention centers by providing group legal orientations and individualized intakes. Our services progress to providing court assistance and legal representation so no child has to be in court alone. While group legal orientations and intakes are an important first step in educating children, children ultimately need an attorney by their side in court to protect their rights and to ensure due process. When services providers go to children's shelter detention facilities to deliver group legal orientations, they help children understand their rights in the immigration court process. They tailor the presentations to be age appropriate. Sometimes their staff will use images, props, skits to illustrate what could happen in court. Following a group orientation, legal services providers meet with each child individually to talk to the child about their specific circumstances and help the child understand what is happening to them, their options, and potentially available forms of legal relief. Because many of the children that receive legal services and social services through the Unaccompanied Children program have experienced severe trauma, it is critical that they have an opportunity to build rapport through consistent in-person interactions. Children often say that meeting our staff at the shelter detention facility is the first time that they learn about what is happening to them. And they trust our staff and confide in them their concerns regarding their safety and well-being while in government custody. As a result, legal services providers are the eyes, they're the ears on the ground at shelter detention facilities, and they're a key part of the framework for safeguarding the safety and well-being of children. Beyond providing legal orientations and individualized intakes at shelter detention, legal services providers ensure that children do not appear in immigration court alone. We appear with children in court proceedings through what are known as friend of court services. Through friend of court services, we assist children who are ordered to appear in immigration court for initial hearings, but have not yet had an attorney or secured an attorney. Friend of court services are essential because children may reunify with a family member or sponsor in a different community from the one in which they have initial hearings, and therefore may be forced to navigate their first hearing without an attorney. With friend of court services, we sit next to the child in court. We ensure that the child understands what is happening in the courtroom as well as their rights, and we support the court in the proceedings. And through the Unaccompanied Children program, we provide children with legal representation. We are their attorneys. Without legal representation, children, no matter their age, will be forced to represent themselves against a trained government prosecutor. That child could be 2 years old. What you would see when you walk into a courtroom is a child seated alone at a table, facing an immigration judge, and navigating their immigration case without legal assistance, alone. So what is at stake today with the near complete shutdown of the Unaccompanied Children's program? As Bilal said, as of last Friday, the Unaccompanied Children Program, which has historically received bipartisan support, has been almost completely terminated. Among the services terminated are front of court services and the legal representation of unaccompanied children. Thousands and thousands of children may be forced to represent themselves in immigration court against a seasoned government prosecutor without an attorney by their side. What this means is that as more children are being placed in fast-track deportation processes, safeguards of due process and rights protection provided by legal service providers are being dismantled. What this means is that legal services providers are being eliminated, removing them from the critical role of safeguarding unaccompanied children's safety and well-being, and whistleblowing and the abuse and mistreatment of children in government custody. And this is being done in violation of statutory law. The Trafficking Victims Protection Reauthorization Act provides that the government is required to ensure, to the greatest extent practicable, that unaccompanied immigrant children have counsel to represent them in legal proceedings and to protect them from mistreatment, exploitation, and trafficking, including harms perpetrated by the government. What we know as a national network of legal services providers is that the near termination of the Unaccompanied Children's Program is an all-encompassing affront to immigrant children's rights. So where do we go from here? During the remainder of our time, you will hear from the dedicated people who work through the Unaccompanied Children Program about the work they do and the children they serve. And you will put faces to the children we serve as we conclude our time together by sharing images from the work we do every day, and ask for your support in an urgent call to action. I encourage you to look ahead, clear-eyed, at what is at stake, and to consider what it is ours to do in community and in solidarity to stand by immigrant children. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your support.
Thank you, Lillian, for your powerful grounding of what the termination of this work means. And thank you for the work that you do at the Florence Project representing unaccompanied kids. I saw a question asking, are pro bono legal services lawyers allowed? So could a lawyer agree to represent this kid, an unaccompanied kid, for free? And I was wondering if you'd like to answer that very quickly, but I'll offer my answer first, and then you can add some color to it. Yes, lawyers can agree to represent kids for free, but there is no amount that would mean we would need hundreds and hundreds and thousands of lawyers to sign up to do that, and that's just not the case right now. Also, I don't. Well, I'll stop there, Lillian. What do you think?
Well, I want to share that our legal services providers across the country have pro bono programs where we liaise with attorneys from our community that have the generosity of spirit to come lend their expertise and their legal experience to providing legal services to immigrant children. What that means for legal services providers like us is that we have programs in place that mentor those attorneys in order to be able to provide those services in a meaningful way. And in particular, at a time when the complexity of immigration law is at a peak, where there's an ever-evolving set of immigration laws and policies that are coming into view, it is important to have legal services providers with a record of expertise to be able to provide the right mentoring for a community of attorneys to come join us in order to be able to provide meaningful services to unaccompanied children.
Thank you so much, Lillian. And we can continue to answer questions raised in the question and answer function as we move on. But I want to turn next to Sofia Calogero.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sofia Caliguero, and I'm a Department of Justice accredited representative with the Florence Project in Phoenix, Arizona. For the last 6 years, when I sit with my clients at the table, I know that they're counting on me to become their voice and advocate for them. To illustrate the depth and breadth of the services we provide through the Unaccompanied Children's Program contract, I'm going to take you through a recent day in my life as a Department of Justice accredited representative. In the morning, I went to meet with a client. She's a new mom. She has a 2-month-old baby, and she is still detained in a children's shelter detention facility. She's going through the process to apply for special immigrant juvenile status, a form of protection for children who have been abandoned, abused, or neglected. This process begins in juvenile court, where she had a hearing on this particular day. I accompanied her to the hearing and made sure she was able to connect to the interpretation services and make sure that everything went smoothly. After the hearing, I met with her and continued working on an application for benefits she's eligible for as a victim of trafficking. She has endured a lot of trauma, so there are a lot of difficult things that she is required to relive during her immigration legal proceedings, and building rapport with her over the course of many different meetings and conversations with her legal team is really important. After that meeting, I strategized with my team on how to advocate for a client who is turning 18. When kids in government custody turn 18, they age out of children's shelter detention and are transferred to adult detention unless they have an advocate who can help them secure approval from ICE to live in the community while they continue their immigration case. This particular client is from a West African country, speaks a rare language, and has been in a children's shelter detention facility for over 15 months. Because no one else in the shelter speaks the same language as him, he has been extremely lonely and has had a difficult time following shelter rules. Imagine for a moment being a child, alone in a foreign country, and not speaking the same language as anyone around you. It's terrifying. How can children follow the rules of a shelter if no one is communicating with them in a language they can understand? He has also been denied access to halal meals and has been denied the ability to observe Ramadan. And now he is staring down the possibility of being transferred to an even more punitive setting by being placed in adult detention indefinitely. For this child and others who have had similar experiences, they often don't feel like there's anyone who can advocate for them. So I really want to be a person that he trusts and knows is on his side. I visit him regularly to work on his case and help prepare him for his aging out of the children's detention, but also so he knows that he isn't alone in this complicated system. One of the ways we do this is advocating to secure the well-being of our clients while they undergo their legal process, like when their faith traditions aren't being respected or when they are suffering mistreatment at the hands of shelter staff. When I advocate for my clients in these type of challenging situations, I am the direct line between them and a complex system. Without the UCP contract, kids facing these circumstances would not have someone to advocate for their needs as a new mom and as someone whose religious rights are being violated. They would not have someone to advise them of their legal rights, options for relief, and appear with them in court. My very first client at the Florence Project was from the same West African country, but he spoke French. I'll never forget the look on his face when I arrived at the shelter and was able to speak to him in French. He felt such relief that he was able to speak directly to someone who could advocate for him without an interpreter. Interpretation services are critical, but kids who don't speak Spanish are often extremely isolated while detained because there is no one else in the shelter, no other kids or staff who speak the same language as they do. These are just 3 examples of the children who will be left to advocate entirely for themselves without the services provided by the Unaccompanied Children's Program. There are thousands and thousands of other children in similar situations across the country who will be forced to represent themselves in unfamiliar and adversarial court proceedings. Beyond that, children who are in government custody are extremely vulnerable, and without organizations like the Florence Project providing consistent services and building rapport over time with the kids, there will be no outside groups to be the eyes and ears on the ground in these shelters. Unfortunately, over the years, the kids we serve have reported instances of abuse and mistreatment in these shelters, and we are often the very first people they confide in because of the rapport we have built over many meetings. Right now, many of my Black clients are reporting discriminatory treatment at the hands of shelter staff. Without the Florence Project, they will have no one to turn to. Children are inherently vulnerable, And the children we serve through the Unaccompanied Children's Program are even more so. They are in a foreign country, often alone. Many don't speak English, and some don't speak the same language as anyone around them. And now they will be forced to represent themselves in legal proceedings against a trained government lawyer with little to no information. When I think about that, I think of another French-speaking West African client that I had appeared for in court. His court hearing was suddenly moved up, and I quickly prepared a motion for the court as we did not anticipate this new hearing schedule. The morning of the hearing, there was no Wolof interpreter available, and I had to tell the judge that the only way we would proceed was with proper interpretation for my client. Since the client spoke some French, the court wanted to proceed with just the French interpreter. But a child has the right to have his immigration proceedings in his best language to properly understand what is happening in these complex proceedings. I can only imagine my client appearing by himself for this hearing. No one with the legal expertise and ability to prepare a motion for him before the hearing or advocate for him during court. He'd be completely alone. This is the very upsetting reality we can expect without the Unaccompanied Children's Program. Thank you all for being here today, and thank you for your support of immigrant children.
Thank you so much, Sophia. And I know that many people are hungry to know what they can do to take action, to defend the rights of unaccompanied kids. We will get to that. We have a suite of actions that you can take. And I also want to thank you, Sophia, for raising your client's experience during Ramadan. This is a holy time. For me as a Muslim, for people who are practicing and observing Lent, the fact that this administration is attacking young children is depraved and really calls into question the kind of country that we want to be. And so thank you again for all of you joining. We're going to listen now to Stephanie, who's going to talk to us about her work.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. So I'm Stephanie Flores Portillo, a social services coordinator at Amica Center in Washington, D.C. And first, I wanted to talk a little bit more about that trajectory, which was mentioned a little bit at the beginning, about the children that we see and what they go through. So the trajectory of a migration journey of an unaccompanied minor can be very traumatic, but for most of these children, the need for safety outweighs the risk of physical and emotional arduous trip. Many of the children we see experience trauma in different phases of their immigration trajectory. During the pre-migration phase, they often experience violence, poverty, abuse, and forced labor. And then during their migration journey, they run the risk of a dangerous trip and continued abuse. And then post-migration, and once they arrive in the United States, it can be difficult to get used to a new language, culture, and accessing basic needs such as education and medical services. And on some occasions, they are also received by a hostile and discriminatory environment in their communities. And once in the US, they continue to be vulnerable to abuse and exploitation, increasing the need for legal and social services intervention and support. Children and youth move to the US, again, seeking safety and better opportunities, but navigating social services and a complex immigration legal system alone is nearly impossible. Recently, I worked with 3 children, siblings under the age of 15, who reunited with their mother in the U.S. after she had to escape from domestic violence from the children's father. The kids were left behind in their home country under the care of an aunt who abused them and forced them to work without pay. Because of this, the kids were granted a benefit for children who experience human trafficking, giving them access to different resources such as case management, food assistance, etc., and among others. Due to the trauma that the children experience in their home country, and the trauma of immigration, it was hard for them to focus on their legal case and school. We connected the kids to a family reunification program, which supported them and their mother in navigating family dynamics and transitions. The kids were connected also with the tools to access other benefits and a social security card after multiple erroneous denials, sometimes navigating these systems as English speakers can be difficult. Imagine what it's like for children who are just arriving in the country. But thankfully, now all of them have medical insurance. They are receiving SNAP and food stamps and are diligently working with their immigration attorney. So similarly to navigating the immigration system, navigating and accessing social services can be complex, and without support, many children would get lost in the weeds of bureaucratic systems that often don't have streamlined processes or lack an understanding of the unique needs and rights of unaccompanied minors. Without support, it would be incredibly difficult for them to access the services and resources that they are entitled to. And social services support is critical to address the client's needs beyond their legal case, while allowing legal staff to engage children in trauma-informed legal services. And this integrated model allows children to receive holistic services for a smooth and safe transition into their communities. So that's an overview of how social services support the legal team. And again, thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. We're really lucky now to hear from the next speaker, Gerson Navidad, who's going to tell you about his story. Gerson, please go ahead.
Good morning, afternoon, everyone. It's an honor to be here today. Thank you so much, Vilad. My name is Gerson Navidad. I came to the United States as an accompanied child. Now I help other immigrant children who come by themselves as a case management associate at Immigrant Defenders Law Center, also known as INDEF. I often tell people I am a living proof of why legal representation matters. At 16 years old, I was in government custody. I was scared, alone, and overwhelmed. No child comes to the United States for fun. They flee their homes to save their lives from serious danger. How the government treats them says a lot about its moral values. The first question I received when I entered the United States was not, how are you doing? Or why are you here? Or even, instead, it was, what gang are you in? They followed this question by handcuffing me, a teenage kid. I was absolutely terrified. I felt like I was criminalized, even though I was just a kid. The truth was, I was fleeing because I had been persecuted by a gang in El Salvador, and it wasn't until I met with a lawyer that I was able to share this part of my story. I was forced to flee my home and family after receiving death threats from gangs. I would have been forced to navigate a complex immigration system without guidance if it hadn't been for INDEF, my attorneys. I met them at the ORR shelter, where they taught me about my rights and how immigration court works. They offered me representation once I was released. With INDEF's help, I was granted asylum, and I'm now a lawful permanent resident. Without my lawyer, the constant intimidation and fear would have probably caused me to sign my own deportation papers. When I think about those moments where I consider that, my body immediately takes me back to the stress and overwhelmed of that time, because I would have likely faced my own death upon my return. But thanks to the Unaccompanied Children program and many people helping me along the way, I was able to integrate into a safe community and reunite with my mom after the 13 years. I learned English, finished high school, and graduated from UC Berkeley with a degree in political science. After I graduated, my gut was telling me to use my voice and help INDEF. Even my mom encouraged me because she had been so impressed with them. I'm so glad I listened, so that I can stand here now and advocate for legal representation for unaccompanied children. I think of children like our client Omar who was having trouble adjusting into a new country, a new school, and a new language. I was able to use my personal experience to coach him on his educational path and help him find scholarship resources so that he didn't have to give up his dream on pursuing higher education. I think of the time that I helped Hannah, another unaccompanied child who needed technological support to complete her schoolwork. She had never used a computer before and needed some support to learn how to use it and take computer-based tests. I was able to advocate for her and spoke to the principal at her school, who made accommodations for her to take the exam on paper until she learned computer skills. Later, we were able to find a donor who gave her a computer, and she hasn't had issues since. As you can see, it's not just legal representation or legal education that children benefit from. By providing a lawyer, children have a dedicated advocate by their side throughout every life choice they make until their case is resolved. It's beyond the courtroom. We help kids do what kids should be doing: going to school, staying safe, and learning. It's really that simple. No child should ever have the weight of arguing their case in court against a highly trained ICE attorney. No child who is in a state of traumatic stress should ever have to think about being in court alone. No child should be left alone without a lawyer to make sure they're safe from trafficking, abuse, or exploitation. Legal advocates alleviate uncertainty so that kids can be kids. This is what made America great. Kids want to do the right thing. As new arrivals, we just need trustworthy adults to help us learn how. So why are we making it harder for the kids? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gerson. Your words are going to stick with me, and I think they're going to stick with a lot of people on this call. As we think about the kind of country that we want to be, what is the first question that you would ask a child that arrives at your doorstep asking for help? I know for me, it would be, are you okay? What do you need? You know, do you have any loved ones around that can help? I'm so sorry. We have some love for you, Gerson, in the questions, and also there's a question about what kind of what are the reasons that unaccompanied children come to the United States? What are their backgrounds? And I want to open this to any of the panelists who want to answer this, but maybe Lillian, you could go first.
Sure, and I'll certainly invite others on the panel to share as well. In my experience as having been part of the Florence projects, starting by being a pro bono attorney and then being a staff attorney in the children's program, the clients that I met were often children who had been fleeing abuse in their home country, neglect in their home country, persecution in their home country. They were often victims of trafficking. And so the children who are making a very difficult decision to leave their home and to go on a journey that oftentimes adds to the trauma that they've already experienced are not making that decision lightly. And the conditions that they're fleeing are often conditions that are implicating their lives. And so the children that I've had the privilege to serve and meet are children who have typically experienced conditions in home country that left them no choice but to make the journey to the United States.
Thank you so much. There's also a question about, can states in the states create similar programs? And the answer is there is a program only in the state of California called the California Holistic Immigration Representation Project that provides some additional support to unaccompanied children. But that's a small program, and there's nothing like the unaccompanied kids program in all the other states. And So this is a real gap in justice. I want to turn now to share my screen and share some artwork created by unaccompanied children who were in government custody. And as we do that, we can talk about what everyone on this call can do and to defend the rights of these kids. Okay. And as I'm able to do that, wonderful. We're going to talk about, can I get a thumbs up if you see it? Okay, thank you. What can you do to defend the rights of unaccompanied kids, to support this program? After this call, we are going to send you an email with action that you can take. We need people to drive emails to Congress because Congress really has the opportunity to provide pushback against this attack from the administration. And we need people to not just send emails, but we need people to make calls. You can use the script in the tool that we'll be sending you to let your member of Congress know exactly what you think about the government taking away lawyers for these kids. And we also need you to watch this space. We will be continuing to communicate with you through our social media channels and let you know what other steps you can take for advocacy. We are calling on people to attend town halls and visit their member of Congress's office and ask questions about whether or not their member of Congress has asked the government why they're stopping this funding. So please stay tuned and look for that email from us after this call and help us defend the rights of immigrant kids. I'm struck looking at this artwork and the pictures of these kids and their clients and the lawyers, just about who we're talking about. And I want to thank you all again for your participation today. I'm going to see if any of the panelists have any closing thoughts before we sign off and take action.
Just to encourage all of us to really seize this moment, to be absolutely clear-eyed about what's at stake, and to not hold back in holding the line at this time. And just much gratitude to all of you who continue to be a community that cares about the protection of rights, the ensuring of due process, and the well-being of immigrant children, and know that we are here to continue that work alongside all of you.
Thank you so much, Lillian, Stephanie, Sophia, Gerson, and to the 500 plus people who joined us today. Watch your email for that list of actions that you can take. Now is the time to raise your voice, not just with Congress, but in the media, writing letters to the editor, writing op-eds, and demanding continued attention on the story. Thank you again, and please stay tuned.